As well as blacks are beginning to fight among themselves. During the brawl, tear gas was used against whites for the first time. And as township violence continues throughout the country, 50,000 blacks are homeless in the Crossroads camp near Cape Town after 4 days of clashes between rival groups. Young anti-apartheid militants have been fighting right-wing vigilantes, and Peter Sharp reports on the devastation they've caused in Crossroads.
It was once a community of 50,000 people. This morning, the squatter camp looks as though it was caught in a nuclear blast. With tens of thousands homeless, local residents who'd fled the fighting were back salvaging what materials they could find to try and build another home. This morning, army units were back patrolling the perimeter of the camp. The army was absent during most of the fighting, local residents convinced that this sort of military presence could have prevented the killing. And the newly erected barbed wire fence was also 4 days late in separating the warring factions. Food and medical supplies are at last beginning to reach the homeless. The British Embassy has shipped in 1,000 blankets. The Americans are providing money. But as autumn turns to winter, it's tents and shelter that's needed most. And the accommodation at Khayelitsha, 6 miles away, caters for just a fraction of the homeless. Most families want to stay where they are.
There are more than 50,000. We have actually about almost 20,000 people. And the situation is so bad that it needs that everybody has to be involved to assist. We need most of the young people to come and give a hand here.
For the squatters of Crossroads, life has never been easy, but their position now is desperate. 50,000 people without shelter and winter approaching. Pressure is now mounting for a full-scale judicial inquiry into the causes of the violence and the part the police played in the events over the last few days. Peter Sharp, News at 1 at Crossroads Squatter Camp.
South African roads meet in the Reverend Alan Hendrickse. Racially, he is classified coloured, a mixture, like many here, of white Afrikaner and black blood. Politically, he's an opponent of apartheid who's been in detention, but who now is one of only 2 non-whites in the cabinet.
What people outside South Africa forget, that it's not a black-white situation. It's a white-white situation. Moderate white with radical, racist, armed whites on the one side. It's also a situation of black-black. And it's the black-black situation that also causes a problem.
The explosive polarization Hendrickse fears most is happening. Last night, thousands of right-wing white extremists who are convinced President Botha is selling out to the blacks first challenged, then humiliated the government. In a series of pitched battles, they took over a National Party meeting and prevented the foreign minister from speaking. Everybody knew it was going to happen. The party was supposed to have been prepared. But the government supporters seemed strangely to lack the will to fight. It was a test of political virility, and they lost. Government ministers have since accused the police of supporting the neo-Nazis, an indication of how deep the Afrikaner establishment is split. The right's charismatic leader, Eugène Terreblanche, says it's a choice between him or the ANC, promises he will restore order with violence. Waves of Afrikaners are deserting to more orthodox right-wing parties, following men like Dr. Connie Mulder, who would be state president now had he not been disgraced in the information scandal.
He has lost control. He realizes that he has lost control and is now making a final call on all so-called moderates, inside and outside the country, to come forward and help and assist him to lead South Africa on a peaceful road. But he has embarked on a road which can't lead to peace at all. It must lead ultimately to violence.
Black-on-black violence has meant hundreds of deaths, another 32 this week in the warfare that's raged through the Crossroads squatter camp outside Cape Town. 20,000 people are said to have been made homeless as old conservative black leaders struggle to keep control from slipping to the newly radical young. Hundreds of children have become refugees, living off Red Cross handouts. Inside the camp, the so-called fathers hunt for the radical comrades in a 20th century barbarism.
Viva UTF, viva!
The police have been accused of favouring the conservative gangs, though they deny it. They put up a barbed wire fence to keep the groups apart. But Crossroads, a squalid cockpit of black politics, still simmers and burns. President Botha said again today that he wasn't going to change his policies despite the increasing violence and the deepening divisions in his country. But the pressures are building up and he's having to zigzag more and more to satisfy them. This is Michael Burke for the 6 o'clock news in South Africa.